Hello, everybody. This is a very special opportunity for me, and I'm almost sort of starstruck here to have the incredible Shawn Villiers, is it?
Villiers, yeah. Very close.
Villiers
I
here.
don't think anyone's ever gotten it the first try, so.
Well, I can almost say conceptualist and animator of Lemon The Ultimate Showdown of Ultimate Destiny. It's great to have you on.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, yeah, thank you for having me here today.
So I just want to start with this because this is like so surreal to me because Dinosaurchestra is one of my favorite albums of all time, and I remember first discovering the Ultimate Showdown is the first thing of Lemon Demons I ever discovered, and I discovered the animation when I was so young. I must have been about like 9 or 10, so it's extremely surreal for me to now be talking to the creator of that now.
Yeah, it's sort of surreal for me too to talk to someone in this position because yeah, we made this cartoon when I was 14, or I had just turned 15 when it was released, and I never talked to anyone about it really like this or whatever. And the thought of someone being starstruck almost seems silly to me, in a way. No offense, just because it's been outside of my like realm of minds. I haven't really interacted with the community, I guess, around the Ultimate Showdown and Lemon Demon much.
When did you first? Because it's become such a sort of like huge like meme and like such a massive thing in internet culture. When did you like first pick up on the fact that like, oh, this thing that I've made is like actually really kind of huge?
The first, so I posted it on. So yeah, I was 14, living with my parents. I'd been working on it for about a month, like after school, and on weekends, and we're like making finishing touches on it and stuff. And I'm like, I just really want to get this out today. And there was a few animation things I wanted to change, but I was like, no, I just need to get this up. And I put it up. I remember maybe about like half an hour before I was like called to dinner by my parents, and I had a sense like, when I was called for dinner, that this was going to be really big. Like the first reaction right away, like the amount of reviews and stuff coming through on Newgrounds, like right away, the amount of positivity and the amount of views and stuff, I was like shaking when I went to dinner. Like my mom kept calling me for dinner and I kept on stalling to like refresh. It just almost right away had this sort of like weird viral quality. And then it was up on the Newgrounds front page for I think over a year.
That's incredible. Yeah. I mean, like it became so prevalent. I remember when I'm quite a bit younger than you, I think. But when I was in our school system is completely different. But when I was in primary school, which is like ages like 10 to 12, I remember like kids in the playground used to know it and stuff, and it was kind of like ridiculous that like almost everyone on the internet like knew of it in some capacity, even if it was like a meme version of it.
Yeah, I actually remember it's so weird like being a kid for this, but like I saw that sort of happen at my school a little bit as I was going into high school and stuff. And I used to get emails all the time for years and years. Like the original version of the Flash file, actually, it linked to Neil's website for Lemon Demon. And I didn't have a website, so I linked it to my email. And so I actually had to change emails because I was getting thousands and thousands of messages. And I still have like a trickle of messages about it for like years and years later.
Oh my God.
But most of the versions up now are like video and they don't have that link. So it sort of trickled off. But I used to get stuff like that all the time of like, oh, me and my whole class sing it and stuff like that. And it's like, it's really cool and really like, I don't know, especially now looking back, I think it's just like, it's really cool to think about millions of people appreciating something that you made. And I think at some points during my teenage years that was lost on me, like how cool that is.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's a very surreal thing. I almost feel like the internet back then was like a bit more of like an intimate place in that fashion.
Yeah, things have really changed a lot since then. And like at the time, the thought of, like, I'm not even sure if YouTube existed, or if it did, it was just such a proto YouTube that like the thought of there being people who are like internet content creators as a job and stuff like that just seemed like really, really far away. And it was like, I don't, like the internet was Flash cartoons were just like a place where people like sort of dicking around could make something funny that they were hoping other people would like. And like, not that that doesn't exist now, but the culture of it was very, like, yeah, it was just very about self-expression, and I'm trying to think of how.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. It felt a bit more like earnest in a way, because it didn't really feel like it was all about like ad revenue and like creating what would hit for money, and it feels a bit more like creating just something you like and it happened to hit.
Yeah, there wasn't like clickbait science was developed in the last 15 years.
Yeah.
And like I remember talking to Neil on we used AOL Instant Messenger back then. And we'd worked on a project together previously called ebombsworld.com, which was sort of a critique of how eBombs World was taking artist content, watermarking it, running ads on it, all this stuff, not attributing it. And we had collaborated on that together. We had met on the Something Awful forums. And after that, we were sort of like trying to figure out, are we going to do something else together? And I remember the sort of making the suggestion of like, I've always wanted to see a big pop culture battle. I think people would really like that. And something about it, I think, clicked for Neil at the time too, and he just started writing it right away. I think it was the same day that he sent me the first lyrics, old Godzilla walking around, up to the point where Shaq. This was the first chunk of lyrics I saw was up to Shaq. And he was like, who should attack Shaq? And I suggested that Aaron Carter attack Shaq because of Aaron Carter's like.
That's how I beat Shaq.
Exactly, yeah. So that's my lyrical imprint on the song. It's really the one part I can say like that was really fully my contribution. Although we did have some back and forth also about who would win at the end, and it was his idea to have Mr. Rogers win, which is something I'm really, really glad we chose, because I absolutely love Mr. Rogers. And as I've gotten older, I've come to appreciate Mr. Rogers even more for, the care and attention that he provides to children, which I think is actually really important. And when you're a kid, you don't really realize how important that is.
Yeah, well, I feel like, I'm not sure if it was intentional or not on Neil's part, but I feel like a lot of that album as a whole has almost like a childlike sort of wonder to it. So having Mr. Rogers win is just,
Yeah, I remember that too with the Dinosaurchestra title track, which is another. It's actually it's another song that I did a video for, although I wasn't involved in writing it or conceptualizing it or anything like that at all. But I remember animating it. It really ends on that sort of like, it's, and Neil's such a brilliant musician, the way that he can evoke things, even just through music. And at the end of the Dinosaurchestra title track, there is this real sense of like childhood wonder and openness of like.
I was writing about it. I haven't posted it yet at all, but I feel like that album as a whole really tells like kind of a story within those lines, because like after the title track you get I think it's Action Hero Movie Boy, which is about like a kid pretending to be an action hero in his garden, and just things like, I feel like the Ultimate Showdown almost feels like something that in the best way possible, something that like a kid would imagine or like play with his like toys or something.
Yeah, well, and it sort of literally was that in a way, because I was 14, like, this would be cool. And yeah, and Neil also at the time was a couple years older than me too, so I sort of looked up to him, and it was a really productive and like great working relationship we had then.
Oh, definitely, yeah. So I was just one of the notes I had here. So did you say you met Neil on Something Awful?
Yeah, we were both members of the Something Awful forums, which were like, early internet, one of the big hubs of a lot of people who went on to become sort of like weird Twitter got started there, in the sub forum FYAD and stuff. And yeah, there was a thread there about some weird stuff that E-Bomb's World had pulled. And then through that, I think he had said something about maybe making a song about it, and that he wanted about making a video, or maybe I suggested making a video about it or something. I can't remember how that exactly started, but I remember we started direct messaging, and then we moved over to AOL Instant Messenger. So that was how we became internet friends.
So you sort of explained the process behind. Oh, I was the animation process. I wanted to know about, because I never realised you were so young when you did it. So you must have been extremely talented. So what was your sort of process of creating the Flash animations?
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. So from what I remember of it, it's been a while, but the way that I sort of deal with Flash now today when I'm animating was really sort of formed, and I was self-taught in it with a pirated copy of Flash. And what I recall first is like going through with the storyboard, sort of like figuring out what the beats and actions were. And I remember, at the beginning where it's like panning in on the city there for a sort of a long beat. That was based on something I think there was some sort of director who had said something like, if you want to bring an audience in, just right at the beginning, make them wait. And so like that, I remember thinking that like this slow pan on the beginning at the city at the beginning before the lyrics, it's like the music starts, there's a little bit of anticipation, and then, Godzilla appears and stuff.
Yeah, it's like a good establishing sort of shot for it as well.
Although I gotta say afterwards, that was one of the shots that I was just so embarrassed of in the years after. I was like, couldn't you just work a little harder on this drawing that's there for a second and like several seconds? Yeah, and then I think I went through animating like different pieces that I had well-developed ideas of, and stuff that was like sort of fun to animate. And I also remember at a point in the process when I'd been working on it for about a month, so I'm going to high school at the time, I think must be in grade 9. I was doing it after school and on weekends, like pretty much all the time. And after about a month, I was like, I'd just been working on this like all the time except for school. And I remember a point at which I sent it to Neil, and he did a few little punch-ups that really made a big difference. I think around when Chuck Norris gets ganged up on by everyone, the part where there's like...
I was gonna specifically ask about that scene, because I'm assuming you did the character illustrations as well, right?
Yeah.
So you had to draw all of those characters in that like almost rap verse?
Yes, yeah, I did. And when I chose to sort of do it that way too, to actually sort of cut down on animation by just have these like floating heads showing up. And then the thing that Neil really changed in that sequence from my version that made it like I think a lot better was changing the background colors and the flashing when they hit landing fast and kick Chuck Norris in his cowboy ass. That part was actually really punched up by Neil, and I'm really glad he punched it up because I think it looks great.
Yeah, well, I think you guys made a great combo, considering Neil already had like a kind of background in video making and stuff. So combining that with your animation must have obviously it created something really effective.
Yeah, and I was really influenced by another artist, Dave Kelly or Schmorky, who had been doing front page animations on Something Awful at the time. So like my lining style and animation style in that video is especially really apparent to me now, the Dave Schmorky or the Dave Kelly influence.
I was wondering if you'd done any other work with Neil before or after, like for lemondemon or anything else, which I might not have known about.
Yeah, let me think if there was a time we did this little project once before that movie Snakes on a Plane came out, and it was kind of like a meme already. He recorded this really quick like guitar song about snakes on a plane, and then I animated a Snakes on a Plane music video like that same night, and it was like the overall process was like 6 or 7 hours. That was kind of an interesting experience. And then we did the E-Bombs World one. There was the Dinosaurchestra one, and I actually started animating Action Movie Hero Boy at one point when I was 15. And I think I even got it, like, sort of embarrassing to say, but I think I almost finished it and then just like didn't, and then lost it. But other than that, nothing else. It was sort of a period about a year or so that we were doing that, and then for a variety of reasons, like I was in high school and sort of like coming into my own as a person in the physical world, in meat space. And this is around the same time too, where Neil's really blowing up and he's becoming a person with a fandom, which is a unusual position to be in. I think.
Well, yeah, that was strange for me to see as a fan. I mean, I was a bit of a later fan. I became a fan in about 2009, so there was already quite a established fandom for Neil's work. But I think especially now, within the recent past 2 years or so, that's just grown even bigger, just huge.
Yeah, well, he does so much cool stuff. He's just I can't praise his musical skills in particular enough, but also I mean the videos that he's done, and Animutation was formative for me. Also, I thought it was hilarious when I first found it.
He's one of those people that you like. I see all these things and then I'm like, oh, that's by Neil. Oh, that's also by Neil.
I had a really cool experience, and again, so what happened was sort of. I've talked about this a little bit elsewhere, but so I animated this when I turned 15, and in those late teenage years, you're going through all these changes in your life, you're coming into yourself and stuff, and there's a general principle of art that you've made recently, but not too recently. There's this sort of cringe dip where if something's old enough, but not too old, that you're like, oh, I was a kid back then, And for whatever reason,
you just sort of look at it and you sort of think, oh, there's so many things I would have done differently within a few months.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm such a better animator now. Oh, I wish I changed this sequence, or why is this the famous thing instead of this other thing I really care about, and all these different things like that. So when I was 17 and 18, that sort of feeling towards the Ultimate Showdown sort of crystallized in me, and it wasn't. I wasn't ashamed of it, but I just didn't really think about it. I just was like, well, I still want to define myself in the world outside of this thing, even though it was a great success. And so I never really interacted with that. I never really interacted with people who were big fans of the video or anything. But a couple years ago, maybe a year or two ago, I was walking down the street and there was this young person walking down the street towards me, and they were wearing this lemondemon shirt. And I was feeling in a whimsical mood. I just couldn't resist being like, hey, lemondemon. I love lemondemon.
Yeah, well, that's a rare thing to see anyway.
Yeah, and then I got to sort of drop the bomb on them of being like, I actually animated the Ultimate Showdown. Which
that's such a claim to fame, especially for a lemondemon fan.
Yeah, and it was really, really cool. They were super nice, and they were there with their mom, and we talked for a bit, and it was really cool. I never had experiences like that when this came out because, it just wasn't like that then.
Yeah, you said that there were people in your school who knew it and stuff. Did you never say anything? I suppose high school is a sort of an environment where you wouldn't want to anyway, but.
Yeah, I think it's a. So I remember kids singing it, and I remember even a kid coming up to me who had figured out that I animated it based on me having the same name as the name that was on the Newgrounds video. And I admitted it to him. I was like, yeah, I animated that. But I think I was just, partially, I guess maybe being shy or not wanting to be full of myself or something, but also having that really fundamental teenage desire to not let other people define you and try to define yourself.
Definitely.
If I started a conversation by being like, oh, I animated this thing, then it's like, well, I'm the guy who animated that thing. But now that I'm 30, I'm like, yeah, I'm the guy who animated the thing. Yeah, please.
Definitely. I was going to say something about... I just before I got on call, I was just asking just a few Lemon Demon fans if there was anything that they liked to hear from you. And one of them, I wasn't even aware of this, but apparently they're like a group of animators are working on doing like a remake of the animation. And I was wondering if you'd heard of that. They were wondering if you'd heard of it or if you had any thoughts on it.
Oh, well, I've seen a handful of remakes over the years. I don't know, maybe not this specific one, unless it's one. So I've been in contact with someone recently who'd been working on a remastered version of it to go in widescreen and take like the existing animation and strengthen it, fix some of the animation errors. Like there's one in the original, little bit of trivia, you can see Shaq's jersey turns green for a second. And the reason for that...
try and point that out now.
The reason for that, he's jumping towards Godzilla. The reason for that is because I'm red-green colorblind, and the differentiation between yellow and green is really hard for me to... At least light green, it's hard for me to tell by eye. I need to use hex codes. They're working on sort of like punching it up to release later this year. And I've been talking to them lately about maybe... even helping out in that process and making some of the changes that I've always dreamed of making, because, the thought of being able to re-release it, tweaking the things that bothered me over the years that I didn't get quite right in it, is appealing. I'm not sure if that's the same one or another one, but in any case, I mean, I've seen a number of reanimations that either started or at different levels over the years, and I think that's totally cool.
Yeah, that's really interesting actually, and. I was wondering if you like continued to follow sort of Neil's work even after you stopped working with him, because I know that he did a remastered song of it, and I think he plays like edited version of your animation in the background at some like con performances, and I was wondering if you'd ever like seen any of that stuff.
I mean, I saw he did a version of it for, I think, Rock Band or something like that. They have a full band version on YouTube also. But I never really went to any cons or anything like that. I watched his XOXO talk. There's a little clip of the animation in that. And actually all that stuff, I always find it really cool because, I used to feel, that when people were talking about internet history, they often left out the Ultimate Showdown for some reason. When talking about, like, they talk about Numa Numa, they talk about this other stuff around that time, but in terms of data, as far as what Tom Fulpus told me, the Ultimate Showdown was like massively huge when it came out.
I think for me, and I think for a lot of people, it's like the first thing that I like, at least me personally, it's the first thing I think of when I think of Flash animation, or most certainly like Newgrounds animation.
Yeah, that's really cool to think about, because and just thinking about like what young me would think about that now later, coming into that situation, because I was someone who's a fan of Flash, and who, I thought we were making something good. I thought we were making something that people would like, but I just never dreamed of it being something that I would hear groups of children singing together,
Yeah, this like must be so strange. Oh yeah, I was going to say just a purely anecdotal thing. I remember recently I had to do an analysis on different type of music videos for my college work, and when it came to animated, I decided to write an entire chunk on the Ultimate Showdown.
Really? Oh, that's fast for a college project.
Yeah. And I like just before I even discovered that you animated it, so it stayed with me for a long time, definitely.
And this is interesting. And did you have a concept of who animated it, or was it just sort of like someone animated it?
Well, I discovered it from the famous YouTube upload, which got taken down.
Was the assumption that the uploader, like Albino Black Sheep, was an animator who had produced it?
I feel like when I became more conscious of who uploaded it, I kind of assumed that, but then when I first discovered it, I was so young that I didn't really understand how the industry worked, so I just sort of understood, like, oh, this person made this song and they probably also made this video or something. I had no idea who Neil was even back then, but I only discovered that you were the animator when people were talking about the re-upload you did.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, because it's weird too, because I like in the interim period, I wasn't exactly going around claiming this, talking about it, and I'd always been sort of passive to it being reshared and passed around and stuff like that. And in the original version of the video, I had credit at the end, at least under my old internet name, Alt F4, which I haven't used probably 10 years. But it's especially hearing. So when this recently happened, is I was like, with the version that was up on YouTube previously and it's taken down and it's now been replaced. It was something I was passive to people uploading, and saying like it's good people to share it and stuff like that. But yeah, and I didn't really try to claim it, but it's so fascinating in this. I came to the sort of tough decision that, the last 15 years I haven't controlled my work. I want to make sure that for the next 15 years I do. I was just going to say, I don't want the YouTube algorithm to think that it actually literally belongs to whoever happened to upload it first back in the day, which is what the YouTube algorithm was sort of telling me on the back end when I tried to upload it.
Yeah, the YouTube algorithm is just completely, that's a completely different conversation, but it is just completely messed up from the beginning. But I don't feel like, I wasn't thinking at all, but I don't feel like you're in the wrong for doing that at all. I know a lot of people on Twitter were quite upset, but I feel like it was purely just because of the view count of that original one. But I feel like you deserve to take back that work, and especially considering you made that from scratch.
Yeah, it's a tough. There's benefits and drawbacks in both directions, but I was really surprised in seeing that there wasn't an awareness of there wasn't seeing comments like, oh, some Shawn guy took it down falsely, and seeing the conversations happen where people are talking about well, actually, that's the name of the person who animated it. And I'm like, yeah, that person gets it. But
Yeah.
It's just sort of weird because I guess, it makes sense that these misconceptions could be around, and I've never really taken any time to correct them. And
well,
yeah.
I guess I'm assuming there's no copyright hold on the video itself either, is there?
I'm not sure what the legal limits around this stuff are.
Yeah, because I'm not. I'm in no way a legal expert, but I was just wondering does Neil ever consult you if he ever uses the video for an edit or something, or is it your kind of joint property?
Yeah, it's been so long since we talked about anything like this, but the general principle has always been so Neil hasn't asked me permission to broadcast it behind him at a lemondemon show or anything like that, but the way our relationship was, it was sort of I never really considered him as having to ask for that, because it was a collaboration and it was the
and
music
it's
video.
I can assume it's sort of like a friend thing, so it's almost not like a gift, but just a thing between you, which is not like a professional work.
Yeah, we didn't. My main concern would be more about, the only thing I'd really be concerned about is other people, taking credit for the art and animation, or using it to enrich themselves without talking to Neil and I. That would be my concern more than if people, people make fan remixes and stuff like that, or stuff like that. I'm in favor of all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's sort of if MTV ever picked up on it and started broadcasting it, then that would be an issue.
I would like to think that Neil would talk to me if that sort of thing was going to happen.
Yeah. So you haven't been in contact with him for a while then?
Yeah, after it was about. So we've emailed back and forth a few times, but we just really went in sort of divergent directions, and neither of us use AOL Instant Messenger, which was the thing that tethered us together then. So
I think it would be very hard to use that anymore anyway.
Yeah, and he's always doing stuff, and he's got a kid now and stuff, and oh man, it feels like forever ago that I knew him.
Yeah, that's so and I feel like you're definitely almost in a lucky position to have like a lot of people be able to pinpoint this video as yours and like correct people on it, because I can probably imagine there's so many works out there which are just completely lost and the creator is just completely lost control or something, and just nobody knows where to pinpoint certain animations or stuff.
Yeah, and I think with a lot of those early internet animations, the people who, like, I used to be internet friends also with the guy who did Peanut Butter Jelly Time, and it's like such a weird claim to fame, right? Of like
Yeah.
Peanut Butter Jelly Time. Oh, I animated that, or like I put the sprites together, I took the music and all that sort of. It's like with a lot of things in that category, I can imagine they could sort of be like myself, where they're like, well, I don't want to be the Peanut Butter Jelly Time guy. I want to be I've got a career. I want to move on and stuff. And so I think some of that stuff, some of that art is sort of early internet art is kind of abandoned, where it's like it's associated with a username of an account that hasn't been logged into on Newgrounds for a long time, and that's the choice that they made.
Well, I feel like almost like, I feel like the reception around those sort of things is like hugely different, like even with just like a generational gap between like you and I. Like I'm 18 and you're 30, and I feel like almost then, I feel like if someone told someone in my age group that they made the Peanut Butter Jelly Time video, that would be like a huge thing. But I feel like if with like different generations, someone's going to be like, oh, that's just like some silly internet video. But I feel like with different generations it's way more prolific. It's sort of like almost like an internet work of art.
Yeah, well, I think there's a good chance that our appreciation for Peanut Butter Jelly Time and all of its fullness is deeper than the creators of it, because a weird thing, and this might just be my experience, I can't speak for everyone, but that feeling of not wanting to be defined by something like that got so much attention is definitely so potent.
Well, you said something earlier which definitely resonated with me when you mentioned like why does this have to be the hugely famous thing when I've done so much better? And I've got like uploads on my channel which have like 60,000 views or something, which is like massive for me. But it's like admittedly some of my least favorite content personally.
Yeah, it's well, because yeah, no, I completely understand that, and like, yeah, now with the looking back, I'm in the second quarter of the game, moving towards dying at the age of 100, like everyone does. And looking back on it and stuff, I'm like, oh no, this is really cool. But when I was 17, it would just drive me wild to think that people didn't know about my writing. That people didn't know about.
Oh yeah.
The sort of like back then I was trying to do like Adult Swim type cartoons, and I was really passionate about comedy writing and sort of like the art of the sitcom and sort of stuff like that. And I made a few things like that on Newgrounds. You can still see there's the Time Traveling Bears, it was called, and also Summer Camp was like a 10-minute animated pilot I made when I was 16, I think is when it came out. And that stuff, I just thought at the time, I was like, this is so great. Like, why can't a million people watch this?
Well, that's the thing. It's like it almost feels like a struggle with, especially on the internet. It's like it's a huge struggle with like getting seen in a way, because like the chances are what you did make was like pretty great and like genuinely entertaining, but like all the people that aren't seeing that will never know, and it's kind of a sad sort of story, because on the internet almost everyone is trying to be an artist and almost everyone is creating like really good stuff, that it's almost like a huge, like it just almost gets washed away in a way.
Yeah, and actually come to think of it, I think part of the reason I'm so comfortable with the Ultimate Showdown stuff now as compared to before is that I feel like now I have sort of found a way to define myself outside of it through my podcast, Seriously Wrong, which I've been doing for like the last 5 or 6 years and has like a pretty sizable amount of listeners. And, we do comedy sketches and talk about politics and stuff like that. We call it a utopian comedy podcast. I think being comfortable and like, okay, this is actually something I'm really proud of and I think really represents who I am and what I'm about. So now I can welcome the Ultimate Showdown back in. You know, like now
Yeah, because
it's not,
it's like another part of, just like a larger thing, which is just like you're like almost like a portfolio, like an online portfolio of all the things you've made.
totally, yeah. And I mean, it is a great video. I actually rewatched it for the 15th year anniversary. It had been a little while, and I've just got enough distance now that I can be like, yeah, this is good. This
Yeah,
is
well, like even if you were looking at it and just completely like loathed it still, there would still probably be something objectively there which is just catchy and just like, well, it's obviously millions and millions of people that just latched onto it.
Oh, it's a wonderful song. And I mean, and there's a few parts of animation, like when he crushes the head between his thighs. It's beautiful. I love that moment.
I
It's
love
like,
that. I love that part.
uh,
One of my favorite parts was always Abraham Lincoln trying to pole vault. Was brilliant.
I also, I don't know why I made this choice, but the decision to make Mr. Rogers stab himself and spray blood everywhere at the end in a cartoonish, weird way was just like, it sort of is the perfect end for the video.
Yeah, do you remember like Neil's reaction when you first sent him like the finished product?
Oh, it was so long ago. But I remember him just being really supportive and cool and just sort of like a mentor to me. Then that's the general take.
Yeah, I'm asking you to remember so much stuff from so long ago, but like, what time frame would that have been? I'm assuming that came out before Dinosaurchestra came out as a full album.
Yeah, it was released in, I think it was December 22nd, was the day that it came out, and I'd worked on it starting, I want to say, in early to mid-November. And so my 15th birthday was December 12th. And I remember it would be sort of between the 12th and the 22nd that it was coming together in its final version. And oh yeah, well I do remember sending sort of a copy of it to him around the time that he did the punch-ups, and him basically saying like, I'd like to make some small changes. Is that okay? But it was not in a like critical way or something. It was like a we're making something kind of way.
Yeah, like a collaborative thing.
Yeah, and all of his changes were great. Like, it made the video better.
Yeah, I mean that's really great, and I feel like I've almost covered everything that I had written down. So I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add, which I haven't mentioned.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I would say that if anyone's listening to this, and they are themselves a young person who does art, I just want to emphasize this whenever I talk about the Ultimate Showdown, is that I did this when I was really young. Other young people can do things that are this great or better. And I hope that people don't feel limited by their age to try to be creative or try to participate in politics or try to participate in the world. And that I would also advise that if you are a young person creating that, and something starts getting really popular, you're getting a lot of attention for it, try to get some good advice on rights management and try to get some good advice on how to manage your own creativity. Like, I've been an intellectual property activist, actually. Like, I was the former leader of the Canadian Pirate Party, which is an anti-copyright organization, fundamentally. So I'm a critic of the way intellectual property can be used against artists, and often is used by big corporations against artists, and the way patents...
That is incredible. That's really cool. I didn't even know that about you, but that's really incredible, because I'm someone who have had some like pretty harsh battles against especially the fair use system on YouTube for like the most ridiculous of things, and I find it just really stressful, especially as a creative. Like, I'll create something which is 100% written by me and edited by me, but because I've used 2 seconds of a clip to emphasize a point, then the whole thing gets banned.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And the way that these like, I could get into a whole soapbox about this, but the way that these intellectual property laws are structured, they're fundamentally about enriching enormous firms on the backs of artists and on the backs of fans. And the patent system, similarly, it's under intellectual property. It keeps people from getting life-saving medicine. And so this became a really major political thing for me over the years that I participated in, and I care really deeply about. Not because I don't want to respect the rights of artists, and just the opposite. I think there's ways that we could reform intellectual property to better serve artists. And it's part of the reason, too, that I hesitated for so long to sort of act against the YouTube system assigning my copyright to someone else, as I sort of felt like I'd be hypocritical or something. But now...
Well, I think just like the way the YouTube system is created is like fundamentally flawed by there's like such a detachment between like human interaction. Like there is no way to file or dispute a copyright claim which isn't just completely managed by robots, and it's not fair at all.
Yeah, and there's no one that I could call or talk to be like, hey, listen, there's this massive video over here that's attributed to someone else. Is there any way that we can keep everything about it but move it to my control? Or is there any way that we can leave it up but you can make sure that you know the copyright is mine and not theirs? There's nothing like that. It's all robots.
I just think it just comes down to like a different time of the internet where I don't think people were quite as worried about, like ownership and stuff, because it was almost just kind of like a playground of just making stuff and sharing it and being like, oh, that's kind of neat.
Totally. And I think when so as I remember, I might be misremembering, but as I remember, Albino Black Sheep didn't ask specifically to upload it originally, but I think they were probably approaching it from the same sort of thing of like, it's everything for everyone. It's the internet. It's internet culture. Doesn't belong to anyone.
Yeah. And like back then, no one could have anticipated that YouTube would have been the like monopoly that it is now for like users.
Yeah, exactly. And when it came to in my decision making on this, again, is like for the next 15 years, one of the big places that people are going to watch the Ultimate Showdown, if they want to watch it, is either through YouTube or YouTube embeds. And I have a hard time sort of justifying it to myself, or especially justifying it to other people when they talk about it. It's just sort of embarrassing to be like, what's going on with the YouTube thing? It was hard for me to justify that I wanted it to be that way forever. And I regretted a lot that I hadn't, struck when the iron was hot and put it up on YouTube, myself, OG, when YouTube was new and stuff. But I just did not foresee the trajectory that we're on towards, information monopoly.
Could have. Yeah. I hope this video helps clear some stuff up with people that may have been, well, not misinformed, but just not would have known about the origins of the video and stuff.
Yeah, me too. And I appreciate you inviting me on to talk about it. It is sort of a cool, trippy thing to think about.
Admittedly, it took a lot of courage, because I was like, oh my god, this guy has worked with one of my favorite bands of all time and on one of my favorite songs of all time. So I'm really appreciative of you responding.
Oh yeah, totally, my pleasure. And the one last thing I would mention is, like I mentioned in my podcast, Seriously Wrong. It is technically, I would say, like for adults overall. We swear and stuff, but it's a funny, wholesome show. We take a lot of inspiration from Mr. Rogers, or we try to, and we particularly have an episode called "The Genius of Mr. Rogers," which is about a 2-hour exploration of who Mr. Rogers was in his life and how we interpret his very wholesome, soft persona within the political realm today, and how we could try to build a society that treats everyone the way that Mr. Rogers would suggest that we should all be treated. So that's the thing I would want to shout out the most to Ultimate Showdown fans.
I'll make sure I link that down in the description for people to look at if they're interested.
Awesome. Well, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure going over this with you today. And thanks
thank
again.
You so much. Thanks. It was nice talking to you.